High in wooded hills, above a half-moon bay, the shy manor hides among thick foliage, affording day-tripping visitors below brief glimpses of crenellated whiteness and red brick. In and out the busy Channel port, through deep summer haze, the shipping glides as though unreal, seen through misty gauze. The house is surrounded by flowering landscaped gardens, bordered by gushing runnels of falling water, which feed the various pools on different levels, where great dark carp and multicoloured koi idle away their lifespans, long as man's, without man's driven purposes and desires. As evening closes in, the waters still, the haze has slowly lifted, liquid olive streaked with flashes of silver, the seas aglow. Parts dating back 500 years or more, other parts built almost yesterday. The rambling building stretches itself out among its precious trees and blossoming shrubs, like a great caravan camped here for the night, settles down and breathes the evening air, with tired satisfaction contemplates the close to setting sun, the darkening sea. Reflected rows of lights upon the water, a few late pleasure cruisers coming home reconcile one to the thought of night. In the house's panelled Elizabethan hall, Dr. Arthur Somers, the modest lord of this somewhat grand estate, awaits a guest. His yellow velvet smoking jacket glows against dark tapestries lining the walls. A smoking jacket for someone who doesn't smoke, he said when Edith Lucas gave it him. Never mind, Arthur, it makes you look so elegant. Standing still, as now, he merges with the background, becomes a figure in these rustic idylls, peopled with 18th century smiling couples. Seated in the dusk, a silent woman watches him as he resumes his pacing, footsteps clopping on the creaking boards. Through the gloom, her hooded eyes gleam silver, ebony marbles highlighted with jet. When she moves, the black silk of her dress whispers softly, slithers in the quiet. Peacocks are calling in the distant park, plaintive voices of the ghostly dead echoing in the hall as in a funnel, mediumistic music from the past, summoned by seance to disturb the present. He has a sudden sense of déjà vu. The wailing of the birds, the gloomy hall, Edith sitting quietly in the dark, the fragrance of her perfume, that more than anything, seeming to come from long ago to haunt him here. These sensations reinforce the feeling of expectation, as if he knows something is about to happen now. The strident blaring of a motor horn and swish of rubber tires crushing gravel wake the man and woman from their dream. Mrs. Lucas rises with a start, like a cobra rearing from her chair, disturbed and angry, venomous and fanged. Our nemesis is waiting at the door. Let us go and greet Professor Job. In the vestibule, Professor Job is dithering with hat and briefcase and a plastic bag containing, they can't help noticing, his wardrobe. Underpants boldly striped in blue and green, string vests, various rainbow-coloured socks. Turning from side to side distractedly, he seems to be searching for something he has lost, if only he could remember what it was. The chauffeur is smiling quietly in attendance, resisting the temptation to laugh aloud. Attempting to hold on to his diverse luggage, Job shakes hands all round, including the chauffeur who drove him from the station to the house. "Let me hold this for you." Dr. Summers steps authoritatively forward, takes the bag. Job dithers with the briefcase and his hat. Mrs. Lucas signals to the chauffeur to be gone, snatches the hat and throws it onto the table, perfectly placed, as though she had been practising for years. "Professor Job, come in and have some tea." Gently and yet firmly leads him away. Arthur Summers chuckles, following on. The ministry offices are in Liverpool, where they were relocated in the 80s as part of some vague governmental plan to bring light to the provinces. Job's long railway journeys frazzled him. Bored hours on thinly upholstered plastic seats, uncomfortably thrown from side to side, incipient headache worsened by several gin and tonics from the trolley. After a couple of cups of tea, he revives, begins to find the house and grounds quite charming. His hostess seems a tasty bit of stuff, a lady of great spirit, with splendid carriage. What is it the frogs call it? Embonpoint? Anyway, a lovely pair of tits. Under Job's parfait gentilhomme attentions, fussing around her chair with tea and biscuits, Mrs. Lucas mellows, just a little. Arthur rings for whisky. The decanter is passed round from hand to hand. "Shall I see your great machine tonight?" Stuart Job asks gingerly, aware of Mrs. Lucas' disapproval. "Machine?" the lady echoes. "This is not some glorified Meccano." Arthur rises to pour another glass, ensuring Edith's measure is a small one. The bottle and Mrs. Lucas, bosom pals, like bosom buddies, often disagree. Arthur lays his back upon the sofa, apparently relaxed, but inwardly tense. His duty to protect his father's work and vision, which he and Edith shared and have continued since Coburn Summer's death. Work so important that government itches to lay its hands on their research, which, in the national interest, it covets so much it's bugged the house and tapped the phones. Job is the dupe of Whitehall, Edith says, relishing the likeness of the words. So-called scientist, a lackey's lackey. We are duty-bound to oppose him by every means. Arthur and Edith are at work on a revolutionary theory of time and of time's concomitant, the void, a quality beyond space and time by which the four dimensions are defined. The nature of their studies, whose ultimate goal, a monumental leap for humankind, is nothing less than the ability to travel through time at will and then return, must be kept cautiously hidden. The gross bureaucracy of governmental caution, with its endless rules, would bring their vital research to a mired halt. Professor Job, the prime personification of all that they disparage, and this includes articles of intimate apparel conveyed in open plastic bags, is a threat to this work of spirit and of mind. In him, the distasteful sleaze of political power puts on ferreting flesh and comes among them. I must admit, Stuart Job confesses, stirring uneasily in his easy chair under the hawk-like stare of Mrs. Lucas, and gulping at his whisky. All of us back at the ministry are intrigued to know why an organisation such as yours feels the need to employ much nuclear fuel. Dr. Summers smiles. Our requirements actually very small, just enough to keep us ticking over. Edith and I are working on our theoretical paper. The staff attend to the plant, occasionally running through some minor work, little experimental bits and bobs. The rest is routine maintenance and repairs. But surely we've been over this before. I sent a thorough resume of our proposals. The foundation was instituted by my father back in the early 50s with government approval, and since then your surveillance has been constant. Constant, snorts Mrs. Lucas, downing her drink at a draught and banging the empty vessel on the table loud enough to make the professor jump. But the purpose of your work, what is its purpose? Pure research, says Summers airily, mainly concerned with time. Einstein's theory left one or two loose ends to be discussed. In our small way, we're trying to shed more light upon a difficult subject, but you know this already. Job looks suddenly shifty, bonhomie peeled back like a rubber mask to show the suspicious, probing intellect below. Mrs. Lucas and Summers catch the look, their own exchange glance communicating doubt and flashing from one to the other the word beware in a silent Morse code of their own. Job realizes that they understand. Instantly, falsely sunny, he says, "Well, I'm here to ensure the safety element, nothing more. Perhaps we'll start in the morning." "Let's do that," says Arthur. "Would you like to freshen up before dinner?" inquires Edith. "Allow me to show you your room. It faces the river. The view is quite superb." The sudden chasm closes. All three are aware of what has passed between them and are now on guard. Summers suffers a wave of something close to panic, which makes him sweat. Strangely, the sensation's not unpleasant, brings with it a glow of guileful confidence. Before the ordeal of dinner with the professor, Arthur and Edith go for a walk in the gardens. Out of sight of the house, he takes her hand and squeezes it. They climb to the gazebo, arm in arm, sit staring at the shimmering estuary. The last of sunlight's fading on the horizon. Brilliant Venus burns in the cooling air. Edith lays her head upon his shoulder, sighs with contentment generated by the landscape and by him. Embracing her, he breathes her musky perfume and the fresh scent of her thick black hair that half a century's left unstreaked with grey, except for a few brushstrokes at the temples. He guesses, but he knows nothing, Arthur says. Edith seems sleepily far away. What? Our friend Job, the great professor. Oh, him. I'd forgotten the lanky toad. Fragrance of lavender, the soft-toned sky full of pastel-coloured strips of cloud, moonrise over the estuary, prickling the skin. An unidentified bird flies overhead, labouring heavily against the shoreward breeze, homeward through the twilight to its roost. With its crowning gazebo, the hill on which they sit is a hollow mound. Coburn's cavern, the cave beneath their feet, houses the experiment to which their lives are dedicated, the staff all sworn to secrecy, the secret kept, and none of them but these two really knowing the end to which they labour. None would know until success came suddenly, so they hoped, crowning the vast resources sunk in this project. For now it was delicious to sit here upon the roof of the inner hidden world, gazing at the real world around them as though it were a bubble which might burst. Just think, we might go anywhere, chuckles Arthur. The merest hint of solemnity makes him smile. Anywhere in space and time, exploring enfolded zones, expanding the mind. We might uncover the hidden inner world and voyage among the secret selves of the self, such as old Jung, my father's friend, described. Those primordial and luminous beings characterized in myth and legend, real beyond expectation in the one living reality within. All this in reach, all this available to us at last. He begins to be carried away despite himself. If Professor Jope and the government allow, Edith says, bringing the conversation down to earth. Summers laughs. What do you think Professor Jope would say if he really knew the use to which we put the nuclear fuel? He probably wouldn't believe a word of it. His mind runs only in accustomed grooves. Edith little knew how wrong she was. Reviewing the situation in his room, looking out over the estuary, Professor Jope's feeling very smug. The place is bugged. In a corrupt world innocent, so he himself, the innocent, imagines. They think that walls will guard them, closed doors keep a medieval sanctuary. Jope can't suppress his satisfaction and laughs out loud, sprawling on the bed. Recalling the bug, he pretends to a coughing fit and runs the tap, smiles inanely at his reflection in the glass. One thing's saved them, come this far. The enormity of the project, the vast scale of their aspirations inspires nothing but sarcasm. Access to their tapes is widely sought and eagerly obtained, not for the wisdom packed there reel on reel. How little the audience understands their worth, but for light relief from the long boredom of the ministry. Yet there are those in that distant fortress, reasonable men of science, who, listening to Arthur and Edith's rhapsodies, take careful note of the occasional spoken calculation and look at one another in amazement. Jope is one of these. Known to himself and colleagues as the pair, Arthur and Edith inspire in him a sort of reverence. He thinks Edith a wonder, a unique, uneducated genius, sees her as the prophet out of nowhere, led by God or Dr. Summers, whichever's the greater. In the space of a mere decade, she's become the world's leading female physicist, charting the mathematics of the void. She's so deliciously feminine and so brash, fired with so much passion. Stuart sighs with envy, knows he's not the slightest chance competing for her affections with the brilliant, super-rich lord of the manor, Summers. The dinner gong's reverberations hum through all the corridors and rooms. Christ, who else in these seedy, threadbare years in this jobless, bankrupt country has a gong to summon them to dinner? He thinks of the windily littered suburban street where his 30s semi lurks in all its horror amid the browning lawns, where Mrs. Jope prepares the modest dinner, if she's not watching the telly, too tired to cook, and he's sent out for a Chinese or fish and chips. The children can't go. They've their homework to do. Besides, the streets are full of muggers and rapists. The gongs, the servants, the candles at the manor seem to accuse him of failure. Fucking Summers, he'll bring the bastard down. Summers and Edith, of course, have dressed for dinner. She looks a cracker in her cleavage-hugging gown. He'd like to give her one and do her a favour. The professor wears his unbrushed, best brown suit amid the flowers and napery and silver. The chauffeur's also the butler, Edith's nephew Arnold, although Jope doesn't know he is her nephew. It's not the sort of thing one tells the guests. Arnold has the huge physique of Atlas and the quiet manner of the exceptionally strong. He's been instructed to keep Jope's glass well charged, but not entirely for hospitable reasons. The glasses seem extra large. By the end of the first course, Jope's drunk half a litre. The remainder's gulped with the roast. "Sweet wine with the sweet," calls Edith cheerily from the further end of the table, encouraging the professor to excess. Arnold pours unstintingly. Jope laughs and downs a welling bumper. This lady's really a card. I wonder if she fancies me, he thinks, eyeing her bosom mistily. Edith dazzles with a flashing smile and raises her glass. Stuart raises his, misses his mouth and knocks the rim on his nose. Sticky liquid soaks his shirt and trousers. Damn! Let Arnold rub you down, says Edith. I'd rather be rubbed down by you, Jope cries as the butler leads him out into the kitchen. Arnold wets a cloth and cleans Jope's clothes. Lovely bit of crumpet, enthuses Jope as Arnold rubs his nether regions. Pardon? The big man stares distrustfully at Stuart. "I mean your mistress." "Actually, she's my aunt." "Oh, sorry, I didn't know." Poor Stuart blushes. After dinner, liqueurs are served on the terrace. Stuart doesn't sip, but gulps them down. The view looks out across the half-moon bay, the full moon high upon the summer night, faint thunder of falling water. Perfection, Stuart thinks, if only Mrs. Lucas. "What do you think of our view?" asks Arthur proudly. "Bloody, I mean very fine," blurts Stuart. But all he can see is a blur of dancing lights. His glasses seem to have suddenly misted over. As the evening progresses, his thought processes grow more and more preternaturally clear, until he feels that he can touch the stars. The conversations deep and to his taste. The nature of the universe and time is analysed and synthesized and labelled. Unfortunately, although his thinking's clear, the range of his vocabulary is lessened. Access to the databank or brain becomes quite tortuous. Print out lips and tongue and teeth steadily deteriorates. The whole computer's slowly going down. The terrace starts to wobble and then to heave, rising and falling like a ship at sea whose stabilizer has been torn away. Job clutches the arms of his chair in the rhythmic swell. "I think perhaps it's time to go to bed." Heaving himself unsteadily to his feet, he leers at Edith, sways, and starts to fall, collapsing backward into Arnold's arms. "Good night, Professor Job. Sleep tight," pipes Edith. Job waves a helpless arm and is dragged off. Summers and Edith are awake at dawn, ready for their morning bout of wrestling. The dangerous presence gives them added ardour, the threat become a stimulant. After a shower they dress and hurry down. No Job. Right now the lanky toad must feel like shit, time to strike. Arthur's eyes are gleaming as he outlines his plan. Sudden business, a phone call. We must leave by lunchtime. Job has to inspect the plant before we go. Arnold is sent aloft with the breakfast tray and instructed to ensure that Job gets up using fair means or foul. As he ascends the stairs, Arnold's singing. Arthur goes off to prepare his team. Edith sips a pick-me-up. She had drunk her share the previous night. Job is chivied down the stairs by Arnold, the hound turned tail and bullied by the stag. staggers to the breakfast table, sickens at the sight of so much food. "I have just the thing for you," says Edith, pouring a glass of glittering nectar. Job takes a noisy slurp. "Dear lady, you're an angel." With closed eyes, drinks the remainder at a gulp, winces. Edith pours another and pushes the glass toward him. "It will do you good." "An angel," he reiterates, squeezing her hand. His stomach steadies. "Perhaps a little scrambled egg, some toast. Do have another drink, if you've a mind to." "The true, the blushful Hippocrene," shouts Job, his voice much louder than expected, waving the glass and stuffing his face with egg. Edith winks at Arnold, thumbs up under the table. Ben Rafovich is seated at his desk when Summers enters. "Prepare yourself. The professor's coming soon. Have you hidden the monitor for the bugs?" "All stowed away. It beats me how these babies can believe we'd be so stupid as to fall for that. The gullible think others as gullible as themselves. It suits our purpose. The professor's private secretary's in our pay, a spy among the spies. Those doctored tapes are very much in demand at the ministry." "Silly buggers. Same charade as before?" "Yes, he's come to check our safety measures. That's the official line, although his briefcase is probably full of extra bugs. Make a few deliberate mistakes. Give him something to do. Although I doubt he'll notice. He's still drunk." Drunk and very tired. As Ben reviewed procedures, Job dropped off in his chair, began to snore. Ben continued talking. "I'll lift the safety shields for half an hour for a dose of radiation. Let me know when your eyes begin to fry." Now and then Job, startled, suddenly awake, looked at Ben unseeingly, drowsed again. He was led around the premises like a lamb. Before the great bronze doors of the inner sanctum, the massive chamber sleeping under the hill, he steadied for a moment, studied the figures worked in silver on the golden ground, images of time and space set in the crystal of the glittering void, then continued somnambulantly on. Professor Job, come finally face to face with the greatest marvel of the modern world, too tired and drunk to notice, passed it by. Standing before these doors his father made, admittedly harking back to La Nouveau, Assyrian in character, redolent of the richer 1930s museum style, Arthur cannot help but feel elated, holding the secret in his solitary mind, unshared with any but his precious Edith. The secret of eternity, his father always said in his resonant tones. Well, perhaps not that, or not exactly that, but something very like it waits beyond the shining promise of those double doors. Void waits, nothingness waits, nirvana, the logical impossibility whose mathematics he and Edith have exhaustively rehearsed, to finally find the something-nothing left when all else fails. Supreme paradox of being, more the negative to life's positive, outreaching mere negation, moves and spirals. His father would have called that movement God. The Buddhists called such being nothing, void, mathematics joining with religion. How well he could recall the unsettling thrill he and Edith felt when they first approached that threshold, seated side by side at the study's lamplit table, the old oak table ridged and furrowed by 400 years of use. Job knew nothing, pathetic little man. Job's masters at the ministry less than nothing. The scientific fraternity in disarray dispersed in all directions its precious seed, uselessly seeking the final exhaustive theory to explain and control phenomena. Reality, the only explication of reality, the popular physics of physicality, the last resort of those who longed for fame, to see their idiot names on every bookstall. Small minds operate the small mind world. The unpedestrian reason looks for more, seeks beyond its boundaries, probing the larger space, enclosing and containing the smaller dreams of less imaginative men. That wider world had been their study passion, his and Edith's, for 30 years. Building on his father's initial theories, the three of them, before his father died, wonderful he lived to see the first fruits, and to know his labour had produced this enormous crop, completed the construction of the chamber under the hill. There the initial experiment took place and was successful. The ministry actually knew the outcome. This was before the bugs were discovered, knew but could not believe, so huge the implications, so far beyond their world's accepted notions. Early May 1973. 10 years they had laboured at the project, assisted by a staff of 12, the best men and women in their field. The finishing touches were added to the cavern. The massive concrete of the entry, hidden and adorned by the double doors originally made to guard his father's study. The installation was a symbolic act, showing their work had left the realm of theory and entered the experimental stage. Great agitation and a sublime sense of what his father called superbia, high-minded satisfaction with acceptable work. For many weeks thereafter, checks and double checks ensuring safety. The harnessed force was immense. Any blunder could send the entire caboodle into orbit. Secret manipulations, programming the tapes whose whirling reels filled half the antechamber, a cathedral edifice set beside the hill. Then the whole place cleared. The three of them, confused with foreboding and excitement, dizzy with fear. Computer chatter scratching the silence, the whirl and check of spinning wheels of tape, a touched switch and locked magnetic coils are interfused with power, hum and glow. Huge banks of flickering lights adorn the wall, before which tiny Edith stands on guard, trembling hands above the console, ready to attend to any lapse. The whole place fills with aromatic ozone and the scent of wires warming, as if with frankincense burned at the holy supper of the Lord. The three attend their altars, celebrants at the non-liturgical mass of time. The music of building forces locked inside the hill vibrates the tall cathedral of their art. This, the first experiment, is random. So Arthur's father tells them. It's not true. He is not the rationalist he seems. The inner Coburn, when allowed to speak, utters a language full of mystic phrases which the outer rationalist condemns. Now approaching 60, his studies have led to unavoidable conclusions he disdains. The entirely logical frameworks given way, and through the gaping hole beneath his feet, unwelcome, scurrilous visitations rise and haunt him nightly. Visions, fantastic visions, crowds of half-dressed people speaking Greek, the Greek of Aristotle and of Plato. His extensive classical learning serves him well. He hails them, telling himself this is a dream, a perfectly lucid dream, but quite unreal. They laugh at him, assure him he's not dreaming. "Coburn," they exclaim. "What is this Coburn?" "England?" they ask him. "We've never heard of England. You are our friend Nicias. Alexandria is our city and your home. You're spending too much time in meditation. Leave the temple. let Ananda wait. Then they tell him Ptolemy is Pharaoh. Waking, he rejects the whole farrago, too absurd to even think about. But when the crux comes, and the question's asked, where in time and space are we to go, he suggests with great misgiving, and as if someone other than himself is speaking, that this, their first experiment, should be focused in the vague vicinity of Ptolemaic Egypt. Arthur and Edith agree. Coburn contemplates the dials and flashing signals, watching carefully for that one fugitive break in the wave of time, enabling him to pierce the ambient void. Once there, to redirect his searching beams across the choppy waters to locate the tiny point of entry into history, to unseal the forbidden passageway, to pierce a drilling shaft and reach the great plateau from whence to scan the semblances of time. The three are so absorbed in their thrilling task, they do not notice the storm across the channel, the deepening darkness of the summer sky, until a sudden hailstorm hits the roof and thunders on the corrugated iron. Lodged on tripods either side the portal, repeating rifles scattering brilliant beams, cupped arc lights turn their faces to the entrance like flowers to the sun. The double gates, enscrolled with bas-reliefs of mystic import, showing scenes of sacrifice and slaughter, flash glittering gold and silver in the light. Lightning, a crash of thunder overhead, makes everything vibrate, and Edith jump. Coburn's so intent he does not notice. He presses a switch that, plastic on metal, clicks. With a smooth and silent motion, the heavy doors swing backward into the cavern under the hill. Are we ready? Arthur and Edith assent. The accelerator purrs, then whines, then roars, then becomes quite silent. Only the drumming fingers of the rain upon the roof, the swishing reels of tape, the automatic flick, flick, flick of electric contact. Barriers go up around the hill, impenetrable barriers of time no force can move. The hill and the cathedral have become a single time machine invisible to the outward senses. What's left in their place? A ghost-like replica which nonetheless is solid to the touch, constitutes a funerary relic of the substance that's passed into the timeless time. These impermeable monuments will stand unchanged by man or nature after earth herself has been dissolved. They will post-date the judgment and proceed unmoved into eternity, themselves eternal. The storm has stopped. A single lightning flash has struck the room and bathes them in its white, perpetual light. They are in the void, the infinite void. Through the gateway, the three of them observe, thrown there like a picture on a screen, gratuitous, delusory, complex thoughts stirred up by the nothingness that moves in sympathy with apperceptive vision. There they must scan those brief, indwelling selves, enforcing primal instinct, rage and hatred, trolls and dwarfs of ego, sending up from archetypal subterranean caverns unwelcome promptings to frighten and perplex our conscious being. Here also the ideographic sun, symbol of larger self, Atman, Purusha, whose loving, warming, sensuous beams enfold in bright coronal unity the circled oneness of all phenomena, past, present, and future, a single tense. This is the place of mind, the personal, abstract, beyond the world of physical decay, unbound from the dictatorial power of those imperious forces fashioning our unfree, driven lives upon this earth. Clinging to personality as to a raft, Coburn Summers searches for a space. Like a camel through the needle's eye, he says, through which to plough the pathway he requires. Finds it. They triumphantly emerge into a calmer eddy of the void and float upon untroubled waters. Taking a flask from her overalls pocket, Edith raises it to the others, drinks gratefully. Arthur frowns and shakes his head. "Only a reviver, dearest," Edith coos. Captain Coburn, such he has become for this, the maiden flight, and Arthur has provided a braided cap, stares intently at the flight displays, then takes reading checks with Arthur and with Edith, deliberates, muttering inaudibly to himself, breathes deeply, then in a clear and level voice issues a string of orders. They respond. Beyond the great bronze doors, the cavern glows with shimmering, inconstant images which, steadying, reveal a living man. Coburn, Arthur, Edith, stunned, all gasp. As if, across a bridge, he moves toward them. A mountain pathway through the gorge of time, swaying from side to side as either unshod foot flaps across the marble floor. What seems to be a marble floor? A tall youth, no more than 20 summers old, apparently a Greek Egyptian half-caste, with the melting eyes of Egypt and the heavy muscular grace of the Aegean, inclined to fat. In his hands the magic book and wand. Beneath the golden tetragrammaton carved above the portal pauses, bathed in the word's profundity and power. Into their presence he may not pass other than in dreams, or as a ghost waits suspended at the silver threshold. They salute him. In reply, he smiles such a smile as plays upon the lips of Tutankhamun's death mask, Gnostic, rare. Like the scribe he sits cross-legged within the doorway, in the sacred star formed in bright mosaic on the floor. The Heliopolitan doorway stands ajar. Heliopolis, not Alexandria, the sultry evening of a thundery day. White obelisks against the darkened sky are phalloi, pointing fingers. Edith looks about her in amazement, suddenly changed. The cathedral and the chamber under the hill, Coburn, Arthur, have melted and recede. She is suddenly whirled through a darkened tunnel toward a cave mouth flooded with brilliant light. As she moves, her personality's stripped of all its present attributes. Memory, like water into water, blends and changes. Emerging from the tunnel into the air, uncontaminated Heliopolitan air, she knows her name is Antonia, not Edith. He, the gorgeous youth, is Farnese Hotep, known to her as Farnese, whom she loves. Her memory of Arthur is a dream, fades and is forgotten like a dream, as Farnese comes toward her, arms outstretched, smiling like an earthbound, exiled god.